I just want to thank first and foremost Reverend Allen for being such a great, absolute, wonderful partner to take on the service last week while I wasn't here. And I understand you had a wonderful time. So thank you so much, Reverend Allen. This month, our theme is compassion, and we're continuing to look at social justice principles. And along with this quality of spirit, this core value of compassion, we're looking at care for the poor that would be in our midst. So today, somehow or another, I'll try and bring those ideas together in some kind of coherent way, such that we get an understanding of what compassion is and how it plays out in our life. In our daily life, I want to qualify how it plays out in our daily life. And one of the best places for me to start addressing this beyond reading the Science of Mind textbook and other writings by New Thought ministers would be to go to the first religious scientist. I'm talking about Master Teacher Jesus. The teachings of Jesus are full, absolutely full of the wealth of information about how we are to be in this life. He says, love ye one another. Love your neighbor as you would love yourself. Sometimes we hear these words and we may think, oh, that's a good word, but it may not be so easy sometimes by the things that we see going on in our daily life. We see someone having a meltdown and we don't like what we're seeing. Do we really love them? Do we want to bless them? Or do we want to persecute them in some kind of way? I want to get even with you for doing this particular thing. So what I believe we have to begin to start doing is to go to the place of the heart, to open the heart, to see if we know what it is to be human in that person's shoes. Do we even know what it is to be human in our own shoes? When we have challenges to come upon us, do we actually sit with them to try to get through the challenge? Or do we say, oh my goodness, I know how to get around this. Do you hear what the word is? I know how to get around this so I don't have to address it. So we do a spiritual bypass, or we do that thing that we know we can do to pass it off to someone else, or to procrastinate it, to pass it off to some other time. And even when that some other time comes up, we pass it off again instead of really addressing it. So if the talk is about love, what is compassion? Is compassion love? And does compassion and love fall into what's going on with us in this regard? So what is compassion? I'm open to hear your definitions.
Oh, it's with suffer.
With suffering.
Yeah. With suffer with.
Suffer with a person.
Yeah.
You suffer with a person. What about if you're the only person there?
Then you call for some help with your suffering to the great beyond.
Okay, anyone else have a definition that you would like to share into this? What have done?
Well, I don't know if it's really a definition, but it seems to me that compassion is very often demonstrated by acts of kindness.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Buddha says that in Buddhism there's two pillars. One is wisdom, but the other is compassion. And those two should be kept side by side. So sometimes when we're compassionate in a way that's not very conscious, maybe it's not true compassion.
Okay.
So there has to be some wisdom that comes with it, I think.
appreciate that, because another place where we can look to really begin to understand the depths and the breadth of what compassion looks like is to go to the Buddhist tradition, because they've been working on this for how many thousands of years? I mean, probably even, wasn't it before Jesus? But here's one of the definitions. Compassion is universal sympathy. Unconditional love that is the givingness of spirit to whomever, to any being, to all beings. In the everydayness of our life, we can literally be walking down the street and show compassion to someone. Can I give you an example? I'd love to give you an example. I went to the shopping center for one specific purpose. I wanted my green smoothie. So I go to the store, and you know, this is my health thing. So I go to where I was to get it. I parked far away so I could count the steps, you know, walking to the store to get it, and I counted the steps back. But as I was walking back, I noticed this lady coming forward toward me, and she was doing something. She had this huge cup of coffee. She'd gone to Starbucks. I think we had something in common. She'd gone to Starbucks to get her coffee. And it was dripping and, you know, liquid all over her hands, and, you know, she was trying to make everything just such that her hands weren't slippery and she would drop her coffee. I, on the other hand, walking toward her, had more napkins than anybody needed for mine. So I just smiled and said, "Would you like to have a napkin?" And she says, "Oh no," and then she thought, "Yeah!" And she took the napkin, and you know, I had to smile, because it was like, at first, it was a matter of, I don't know this lady, I'm not going to take it, and then it's like my need comes before what I'm seeing before me, because sometimes we judge according to appearances, and we don't really know what's there. But I feel like at that point, I was that little angel that was helping her to set herself aright with her coffee, because she took that napkin, opened it up, and she cleaned her hands up. She said thank you and went on her way. Unconditional, that's an example of our unconditional love. That's compassion that we showed. I could put myself in her shoes, because if that had been me, I would not have wanted to drop my green smoothie that had ginger and a few other things that I like to taste in the coolness of what I slurped up. It was good. So, you know, that's an example. And I'm pretty sure that when you look at your life, you can find those same little serendipitous moments where you will do something just out of your unconscious. You just do it. This person doesn't mean any more to you than anyone else, but you just do that for them. Why? Let's go back to this beautiful statement that was read in our inspirational reading, Compassion in Love Indeed. Humanity and divinity will be identical when we recognize divinity in humanity. And what was the follow-on sentence? Compassion is the most gentle of human virtues, for it is the outpouring of the divine givingness through all. It's the outpouring of the divine givingness through you. So you don't have to go searching for it, because it's right there. The only thing we have to do is just allow it to happen. What happens with our intuition, Reverend Allen? Sometimes that thought comes to us to do a particular thing. We choose whether or not to do it, or we choose not to do it. When something so strong that is for you to do, you hear it not only in your mind, you hear it from your heart level, and you know, this is mine to do. And what happens? You actually end up doing it. Oh, so when we are dealing with unconditional compassion, when we're dealing with that, that is God expressing through your human physicality. Unconditioned love. Unconditioned. Oh no, it's not the woo-woo thing. It's that God comes in the everydayness of life through people, places, things, through events. God comes. Sometimes people have asked, how did I merit this good that has shown up in my life? I don't have the answer. But what I do know is that the givenness of God is not restricted to certain people. It's available to all, through all. We just open ourselves up to say yes and allow it to happen, allow it to be. Dr. Holmes said, the only guarantee of our divinity is in its expression through our humanity. What? Shall I repeat that again? The only guarantee of our divinity is in its expression through our humanity. So I believe we can take from that compassion and caring really binds us or ties us together in a mutual understanding and in a unified effort to uncover that divinity. Because we don't just go out searching for, can I be divine with you today? We don't go searching for that, do we? Do we?
No.
No, we don't. But can I be a helper to the stranger? And the answer is yes. And I would say one of our primary examples of that would be a mother with children. When one of the kids is not acting in accord with what the mom wants them to do, and the stranger comes along and gives her assistance. God didn't say, oh, I want you to go down to this particular shopping center and stand in front of this store because at a certain time this mom is coming with these kids and Lord knows she needs help. That doesn't come to us. We are where we are in life at any point in time, and the Spirit just operates through us. The divinity that we are shows up. So I and you and me, we are the divinity. I love that song. It's a rap that was spoken by Reverend Deborah Johnson. But she talks about unity and how we have to come to a recognition of its presence and how it shows up in our life on a daily basis. I want to share with you one of the parables from the teachings of Jesus that really demonstrated Jesus and his use of compassion and his understanding of compassion. But not only his use and understanding of it, but also the people who were involved in it. And this is the story of Jesus healing the centurion's servant. The centurion had heard about Jesus. And the centurion was a man, a person of authority, great authority. He understood authority in the physical capacity in which he lived and operated. If he told a person to go there, that person went there. If he said, come here, that person came here. Whatever the centurion told a person to do, that person obeyed. So he knew that his word of authority meant something, and things would happen as a result of his spoken word. The centurion's faithful servant was sick, was ill, but the centurion had heard about Jesus and had heard that Jesus spoke his word and people got healed. So what the centurion understood was that just as he was a person of authority, Jesus too was a person of authority in the mental and spiritual realm. That when Jesus spoke his words, things happened. Jesus spoke his word with love, with compassion. It wasn't, oh, you old dirty bomb, blah, da, 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 da. You really don't deserve to be healed, so I'm walking past you. No, Jesus was requested by the centurion. The centurion said, just speak the word. You don't have to come to my home. You don't have to come to where my servant is. I know you to be a man of authority. Just speak the word, and I know your word obeys. It does what it says it's going to do. Yeah, you know, I'm paraphrasing because I have to make a good story here. He knew that this would happen. And Jesus marveled, oh my goodness, there's somebody who really gets it. They understand that they too can speak the word and see things happen. And that's exactly what happened. And Jesus also saw this centurion as a man of faith because he had faith in Jesus' ability to speak the word and see it happen. That is a demonstration of compassion because Jesus did not lay eyes on the servant. He had compassion within himself to bring health and healing, to bring that element of wholeness to this person. Now, what greater love can we show another person than to be able to help them in their time of need? Sometimes when a person can't do things for themselves and we have the capacity to do it for them, to help them out, sometimes we're moved to do that and we do it and things get better. You find that especially with your loved ones or with your good friends. I mean, your really close good friends, people that you care about, you see that. And in our being like that example that Jesus has shown, that example of showing compassion, we allow ourselves to truly be in that space of awareness as well as understanding of love. We do. It doesn't have to be bells and whistles. You're just there. I can recall working with a few people, and it just seemed like to my supervisors that they weren't getting it. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to say. You know, when you've done everything that you know to do to make a thing work, and you're ready to throw up your hands, but something says, oh no, they'll get there. And I remember saying, just give them a little more time. They'll get there. They will get there. That too is an example of how our unconditional compassion supports all of life. How can that be? Number one, there's only one of us here. There's only one of us here. Only one. I don't care what this other idea that rumbles around in the universe may say, that we're separated and we're isolated. No, the truth is there's only one of us here. And as Jesus says, we are helpers one to another. Let me give you this word from Pema Chodron, and it's from her book, Start Where You Are. It is unconditional compassion for ourselves that leads naturally into unconditional compassion for others. If we are willing to stand fully in our own shoes and never give up on ourselves, then we will be able to put ourselves in the shoes of others and never give up on them. Oh, how about that? That tingles me, because it's like, learn how to be good to yourself. Learn how to be compassionate with yourself. Oftentimes we have experienced being too hard on ourselves, like we're some kind of robot, instead of recognizing that we have feelings and that we have green growing edges that are before us. We may not be able to do it. Everything that we say we can do, sometimes we have to learn how to do that. But in this gathering of this kind of understanding, we learn that true compassion does not come from wanting to help out those less fortunate than ourselves. It comes from the realizing of our kinship with every person, with all. There was something very wonderful that happened in Oakland last week. Really, really very wonderful. And I would love to share it with you. There is this guy named Terrence McGrath, a real estate developer. Lives in a nice ritzy area in Piedmont, which is surrounded by Oakland. Piedmont. A 4,500 square foot home valued at $4 million. This man had the audacity, I say, the audacity to invite a homeless couple to move into his home in the in-law suite of his home. Can you imagine what happened next? Of course, the couple, and let me give you their names, Greg Dunstan and Marie McKenzie, they had been together for many years. But they had this history of things going so bad that they were on the street for many, many years. And somehow or another, Terrence saw them and struck up a conversation, and he kind of watched them. And they were just kind of tired of, they had all of their belongings in a cart that they pushed from here to there. They didn't really get a good night's sleep, because it's like, I'm sleeping with one eye closed and one eye open. I mean, it was just a hard time. So after some time, Terrence invited them to come and live with him in this neighborhood that did not have many people of color. They actually got a good night's sleep the first night that they slept on this furnished place. They didn't have to bring any furniture. They didn't have to do anything but come in and receive the gift. All right. Terrence invited them to go out and get to know the neighborhood, so they walked around the neighborhood, and guess what happened? Calls started going into the police department that there were people there who looked like they don't belong there. But guess what? Compassion has wisdom. Someone said earlier that wisdom goes along with compassion. Terrence used wisdom, and he had called previously the police department and told them who he was, where he lived, and that he had guests living in his home, and that they would be walking out in the street, and it's likely that you will get calls about them. I placed them there. I placed them there. They're my guests. They're not doing anything wrong. So when these calls start coming in, the police department will tell the caller, well, yeah, we know they're there. There's nothing wrong. Your neighbor invited them to live there. So this happened back in February, and it kept moving forward till they finally let us, the community at large, know about it just last week. The calls have diminished to a degree because of the response from the police department. Well, there's no crime for being there if you were invited. That was the response. And now the neighbors are getting used to the fact that there are people of color in the neighborhood that are being visible in a much more visible way. And they're having also to deal with the fact that Terrence allowed his compassion to come into play for this couple. It's not saying he can do that for everyone. It's saying that he has decided to do an experiment to see what would happen. And for him to allow that experiment to happen, his compassion had to go before him and make the way. This man used his wisdom and his thinking to make sure that his guests would be able to stay there. And he kept down harm for himself, for them, as well as the neighbors. And now the neighbors are saying, well, Terrence is a nice man. I guess we'll have to learn to trust his decisions. Now, Terrence is not living in that house by himself. He has 2 grown daughters, but they've got their own lives. One's in college and the other has a job in another country. So when they come, they just come. They don't live there all the time. But here is another really great example of us understanding how we can use these thoughts of compassion, the sympathy and the empathy for another person's condition, how that compassion that we have can support them in their livingness as well as support us in letting go of the boundaries that we impose upon ourselves. I mean, I know it's true that many times we can look at a situation and say, oh no, not too sure. I mean, we have some hesitations, but this is a way of opening up. It helps me to ask questions like, how do we create a world or a domestic situation or a job situation wherever we may be? How do we do that? How do we create the space where people feel that it's okay for me to be here, that I really belong here? I don't have to pull back myself. I don't have to shy away. How do we create that world? See, we says in the Centers for Spiritual Living that our vision is we're creating a world that works for all. Yeah? That's what we say. But how true is that when we don't allow ourselves to get to understand the situation or the circumstances of the people that we would call the other? The other. Beverly, what I love about you is you just seem to love everybody no matter what's going on. But that is a wonderful, beautiful gift of the Spirit to be able to say, yeah, I know there's circumstances, I know there's stuff, but, I just love them. I can't help it. It's possible. It's possible. It is so possible. So how do we create a space where we find out how to become a part of the world we're living in, and to be less separated, to be less isolated and afraid? How do we do that? I think Ernest Holmes said it best when he said, this we must affirm. There's only one life. There's only one cosmic reality. And this is what we affirm for us all. There's only one life, one cosmic reality, one God. And that nature of God is in every human being, every last one of us. So yes, I agree with Dr. Holmes when he says when humanity and divinity come together where they really identify themselves, then they know that they are one. Humanity and divinity. This is what I'm asking you to really consider this week and perhaps for even longer. Compassion. How can I be more compassionate in my life? How can I be more compassionate with the people that are part of my life? For some reason, they're there. Sometimes we'll find out that reason, sometimes we won't. But I know above everything that our global vision is a good vision. That it is not only a global vision, it's a local social vision, and it's a personal vision. How can we be better within our own selves such that we don't have the prejudice against that which is not like us? We have to begin to let go. This is one of the things that I have loved about this denomination. We're not putting up the walls and barriers. We're saying the door is open. Come in. Ernest Holmes said that this denomination is one that is open at the top. So we're opening the door. We're continually opening the door, and we're welcoming people and their stuff to come in. I hope the stuff that comes in is coming in to be healed, for us to recognize our nature and our oneness together. So with that, I just want to give grateful thanks, not only for this teaching, grateful thanks for the teachings of Jesus, grateful for the teachings of Buddhism, grateful for any spiritual thought that tells us to love and to love one another, because we truly are the helpers of one another. We're one and the same. And with that, let's just go within. And this day, and this time, we're truly grateful that the divine presence of life, the infinite creator of all things, is in our presence, in our midst, and reminds us that we are here belonging to one another. I give grateful thanks that there is